Thank you, Dan. Good morning, good afternoon, dear participants. Welcome to this webinar on preparing for discussions on the Rotterdam Convention COP12 agenda items. This is the first time that in preparation for the COPs, we're also holding webinars on substantive items that are on the agenda of the discussions. And there was a whole range of webinars now happening in the month of March and April. So please have a look at the BRS website if you're interested in joining other sessions. With that, and Dan already explained to you all the technical functions of this webinar, let's get started. This webinar is composed of two parts. The first part will be focusing on the topic of enhancing the effectiveness under the Rotterdam Convention. This is in follow-up to decision RC 11.4, where there was a specific request from the Conference of the Parties to hold a webinar to present the report that has been prepared and discuss it. So we will be dedicating approximately half of this webinar to this topic and have time for thorough presentation and discussion. And then the other half of this webinar would focus on other items that are on the agenda of COP12 of the Rotterdam Convention. I would then hand over to my colleague Iwan Ewang, who will take care of this first part of the webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrea, and good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all the participants. It's a pleasure to be able to present to you the work on enhancing the effectiveness of the Rotterdam Convention this afternoon. So in terms of the topic itself, there are three elements to the topic that are presented overall in the document 16 that is available on the meeting documents page of the website. Those relate to an amendment proposal that has been considered but not concluded to date by the Conference of the Parties relating to Article 16 of the Convention. Then there is also a report on the implementation of the information dissemination strategy as the second element of this work. And then there is the report related to the information that was collected and compiled following decision RC 11.4 from the previous meeting of the Conference of the Parties. So we'll give you an overview of the three elements, but really delve into the most detail in relation to the report, as Andrea said, in response to the request from the Conference of the Parties. In addition to the document 16, you have more detailed documents in document 16 add 1 and information documents 17 and 18 that are all available on the meeting website page. So looking first of all at the issue of the report and what work was done in response to decision RC 11.4, there was a call for this information, and 10 parties and 7 observer entities responded, providing information on 3 different categories. So there was information related to potential direct and indirect trade and socioeconomic impacts, as well as financial implications caused by or anticipated as a result of listing chemicals in Annex 3. And that included information on costs of inaction. The second field in which information was provided was on benefits and challenges of introducing alternatives for chemicals recommended for listing in Annex 3, and any actions to address challenges that may have been faced. The COP11 also called for information on challenges in implementing legislative and administrative measures for sound management of chemicals and their alternatives, including challenges related to technological and scientific capability. So the information you have within the document, information document 18, is structured following that those categories that were set out in the COP11 decision. The Secretariat has compiled that information within the annex to the document, but also made it available in on the website on a separate page. So to try and make the information easily accessible for you. And then, as mentioned, the report in full detail is covered in information document 18, with the webinar today to present that and discuss. What is proposed within the document 16, so the main document that's put for the Conference of the Parties, is to take note on the implementation of the information dissemination strategy. So you may remember that was the second element of the three parts to the work on enhancing the effectiveness. But it's also set out that the COP may wish to consider the information in document 16 as well as in document 18 and take further action as it deems appropriate. Now, in terms of the details of what is in the report, there are a compilation of the information provided within the 17 submissions, as well as some options for a possible way forward, and specific recommendations that were set out in what was received within the submissions. Some of those options may need further consideration, evaluation, and fleshing out by the COP. And the report merely reflects the recommendations without according any priority or indicating any values to those recommendations. So it's really setting out what was received from parties and observers as information. In terms of what was contained in those specific recommendations, the recommendations include the possibility of enhancing information exchange and effective communication, including by using databases such as the eChem portal, and the submissions that were received looked at where those databases could be found and provided more information on their uses as well. So one of the recommendations, or one set of the recommendations, was to use those to provide required information to parties. There was also a proposed recommendation to develop a mobile application, frequently asked questions, and supporting documentation to help parties overcome the challenges that they faced. There was a specific recommendation from a party to establish a permanent committee on effectiveness that could take action to overcome the obstacles that are being faced in relation to reaching a consensus to list chemicals in Annex 3, and that body could carry out workshops on recurrent issues of divergence. The recommendations also included consideration of how to continue the decision-making and strengthen the decision-making in the Chemical Review Committee. And there were a range of different elements that were suggested, including from conducting in-depth reviews of notifications according to the Convention's rules and the committee's handbook of working procedures and policy guidance. There was also, within that context of the decision-making within the CRC, a recommendation to provide more opportunities for intersessional meetings and ongoing training for experts, developing a methodology such as that used by the POPs Review Committee of the Stockholm Convention, to analyze technical scientific criteria and promote verification of information that's submitted in notifications of final regulatory action. Staying with this issue of the CRC, there was also a recommendation to develop mentoring and capacity building opportunities for incoming members of the committee to ensure that there was a continuity of knowledge and expertise, as well as ensure coherence in the work of the committee. There was also a suggestion that the Conference of the Parties adopt a decision to provide clarity on the use of Annex 3 listing by private certification standards bodies, as well as a recommendation that the COP could communicate with relevant organizations to address challenges related to the criterion 6 of classification of a highly hazardous pesticide under the International Code of Conduct on Pesticide Management. Another of the recommendations was to provide technical assistance to support the adoption of national regulatory measures, to develop infrastructure to conduct risk analysis and other types of evaluation that underpin the submission of notifications of final regulatory action. There was also a recommendation of providing targeted training and awareness raising on issues such as integrated pest management, encouraging new practices, and greater use of alternatives. In terms of sharing information on best practices, one of the recommendations was to extend the use of the PIC circular to share information on best practices on risk management for pesticides that are listed or proposed for listing and potentially subject to restriction for import. There was also a suggestion or recommendation to translate the Handbook of Working Procedures and Policy Guidance that is for the Chemical Review Committee into the official United Nations languages, to make provision for interpretation and translation of major resource documents into, again, these official UN languages, and to develop and use technology to identify and track international trade in chemicals. So that could be a database using the harmonized systems customs codes or data traceability technology. So that's a very brief run through what were included in the specific recommendations coming from parties and observers. There was also a lot of detail put into the 3 different categories of information that was received from the parties and observers. So to see how the COP would like to proceed with one, several, or any of those recommendations. In terms of the other elements related to enhancing the effectiveness of the Rotterdam Convention and turning to the proposal to amend Article 16, some of you may recall that this was initially submitted in 2016 by a group of African parties to the convention for consideration at COP8. There was discussion, but no consensus reached at discussions at the meetings between COP8 to COP11. And as this matter has not been concluded, it is again on the agenda for COP12. So here, the proposed action within the document 16 is that the COP consider adopting the proposed amendment. With that very brief introduction to the Enhancing Effectiveness report, we'll maybe turn to the discussions and open the floor for any questions or comments that participants may have, and happy for participants to either raise their hand or to put comments into the chat. Thank you. And if I could please ask Dan to let me know if there's anybody who has their hand up. maybe to reiterate that the meeting documents are all available on the website as well. I see the hand of Hilma. If you could please take the floor. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very, very much, and good afternoon. I just want, when I log on, I think you have already started, but I just want a clarity where I heard you talking about research, something related to research, but I cannot get what was it exactly. Can you repeat that? I think maybe it was the second slide, if I'm not mistaken. Or yeah, when you finish this one, it was in this slide.
Right. Okay. I think what you may have been looking at were the areas on which the information was requested in the decision 11.4. So we had 3 different areas, and the document 18 is split into these areas as well. So you have information on potential direct and indirect trade and socioeconomic impacts, financial implications, including the cost of inaction, benefits and challenges of introducing alternatives, and actions to address those challenges, as well as looking at challenges on implementing legislative or administrative measures for some management of chemicals recommended for listing and their alternatives. So all of that is included within the report, and it follows the structure of what was in 11.4. So I hope that's addressed your query. And if I can maybe go through to the questions we have in the chat. I see we have a question asking to detail the African amendment proposal. So the amendment proposal is to add text to Article 16 that currently relates to technical assistance, and it's now proposed that there be text added relating to parties cooperating to provide technical and financial assistance for the development of the infrastructure and the capacity necessary to manage chemicals to enable implementation of the convention through the Global Environment Facility Trust Fund. So it's looking at having a financial mechanism for the Rotterdam Convention. And just to confirm that in response to the question of will the same African proposal be discussed or an amendment, it is the proposal that was considered at previous meetings. So it is the same proposal that has been considered since COP8. In relation to the where to find the material for the presentation, we can put the link to the meeting documents website page, and you will also receive a copy of the presentation. So you should have all of those documents available to you by the end of this afternoon as well. So in terms of the submissions, you have a link in this slide, and that will take you through to the submissions page, and there is also the documents that are listed here will be found on the meeting website page. So I hope that responds to the questions we have at present. And please feel free to let me know if you have other questions. The intention was to provide everyone with an opportunity to discuss the different elements and recommendations and options that were raised by parties and observers in their submissions in response to Decision 11.4. And there were quite a wide range of challenges identified, as well as possible actions. So certainly this is an opportunity for everybody to speak about that in let's say a less formal setting than within the meeting of the COP itself. We have another question. Do we have any other proposals than this African proposal to be discussed at this COP regarding enhancing the effectiveness? In terms of enhancing the effectiveness, there was what the Secretariat was mandated to do was to prepare this this report for consideration and discussion. So in terms of the proposals going forwards, we've compiled what was provided by parties and observers, but again, without any prioritization to that. So it would be for COP to discuss and see which of those recommendations or options parties may wish to mandate going forwards in terms of further work, whether that be a request to the Secretariat, an invitation to other bodies, or other activities to take up, such as the work relating to the CRC. I'll just see if we have any further hands. For the moment, I don't see any hands, and just to let colleagues know that we have put the web page for the meeting documents in the chat, so please do feel free to copy and paste that, and that way you can access the documents directly. Maybe if we have no further hands or questions, I can turn back to Andrea, and we can proceed with the part 2 of the webinar.
Thank you, Yvonne. Okay, then let's proceed indeed to the second part on the other Rotterdam Convention COP12 agenda items. So you can see here the provisional agenda of the Rotterdam COP12 meeting available in the document number 1. And we'll be having a look at the matters under item 5, matters related to the implementation of the convention, to those that are specific to the Rotterdam Convention. Starting with the listing of chemicals in Annex 3 to the Rotterdam Convention. So under this agenda item, there is always one part that relates to the work of the Chemical Review Committee, and then there's the second part with the specific chemicals that are in front of the COP. There's a meeting document number 5 that provides information about the relevant developments under the CRC. And then an information document will come out shortly that contains the CVs of candidates that were proposed for being elected as members of the CRC. Under this agenda item, the Conference of the Parties will consider the replacement of 17 members of this committee that have terms of office ending on 30 April 2026. There are also a number of additional replacements of members that still have ongoing terms of office, but where the members were replaced. And actually, this number has grown to 5 since Friday. And then there is also a vacancy that remains open from the last COP, from COP 11, that was not filled. And then here on this slide, you can see information on the work that has been carried out by the Chemical Review Committee on its last 2 meetings, CRC 19 and 20, on the review of notifications of final regulatory action, and also on the review of proposals of severely hazardous pesticide formulations. You can find details in the COP document number 5 or also in the meeting reports. The CRC has been quite busy over the last 2 meetings, and it's again expected that we'll be quite busy at CRC 21 in September this year. The proposed action on this document relates mainly to the appointment of the members, so the 17 new experts that need to be appointed, and then also to confirm the other replacements. And then there's also always a request in this decision for the Secretariat to continue to implement training activities for new and existing members within the framework of the Technical Assistance Plan and subject to the availability of resources. Let's then move on to the specific chemicals that will be considered. So there's a total of 10 chemicals to be considered for listing by COP12, out of which 4 will be considered for the first time and 6 are coming back from previous meetings. So we'll first look at the 4 ones that are considered for the first time. There's 1 industrial chemical that I'll present, and then I hand over to my colleague Alexander to take care of the pesticides. So the industrial chemical that is being considered for listing at this COP meeting is mercury. So mercury is already listed, mercury compounds are already listed under the Rotterdam Convention as pesticides. And now there's this recommendation from the CRC coming to list mercury also as an industrial chemical. You'll all be very well aware that mercury is covered also under the Minamata Convention on Mercury, where the export of mercury is still possible following a written consent procedure. The related document here is document 13 that provides the information and the proposed draft decision to amend the convention to include mercury. And then 13 add 1 is the draft decision guidance document. So for each chemical that is considered by the Conference of the Parties for inclusion in Annex 3, the Chemical Review Committee prepares a draft decision guidance document, which is then to be adopted by the Conference of the Parties. And in line with the requirements for the listing process, there are also 2 information documents in front of you. The first one listing the recommendations and rationale from the Chemical Review Committee for this recommendation, and then also the comments and responses that were collected on the draft decision guidance document when it was in the process of development at the CRC level. So all the documents for the listing of chemicals are generally already available on the website. The only one that is outstanding is this last one, the information document number 8, which relates to a compilation of comments received from parties related to the various listing proposals. We're still finalizing that one as comments are still coming in, but then it should be available in the next 2 weeks as information document number 8. And with that, I'll hand over to my colleague to introduce the pesticides to you.
Thank you, Andrea, and greetings to all the delegates, also from my side. I will continue now with methyl bromide, which is basically the first of the pesticides from the chemicals that are going to be considered at COP12 for the first time. To give you a bit of background information for this chemical, it was recommended for listing in Annex 3 by CRC 18 based on the notifications of final regulatory action from Colombia and the Netherlands, which were both submitted based on human health and environmental concerns. Both notifications by Colombia and the Netherlands are submitted a severe restriction. In relation to Colombia notification, methyl bromide was used as a soil fumigant, and only the uses of gaseous formulations of methyl bromide still remained allowed for quarantine treatment and control of quarantine pests in agricultural products and packagings at ports and border crossings. And for this reason, only use of authorized and airtight fumigation chambers is required. With regards to the Netherlands notification, which is also a severe restriction, Methyl bromide was used as a fungicide and as a soil disinfectant, namely in the category of fungicide and nematicide. And the FRA that has taken effect implied that the use of methyl bromide as a soil disinfectant was prohibited, with potential exemptions granted based on individual requests. And since 1992, methyl bromide was fully banned as a soil disinfectant. However, the notification from 2001 indicates that only the uses as space fumigant in gas-proof rooms remained allowed. And the DGD underlined that the last authorization in Netherlands was withdrawn by the authorities, and therefore this means that methyl bromide in the country is effectually banned. All the documents of relevance are available in the screen. What's important also is that methyl bromide is also covered by the Montreal Protocol on substances that deplete the ozone layer. And it's important to be underlined to you that methyl bromide is a very potent ozone depleting substance that damages the stratospheric ozone layer. And uses of methyl bromide in relation to the Montreal Protocol are allowed only for quarantine and pre-shipment purposes. And they're so-called exempted uses under the Montreal Protocol. The decision is contained in document 1214, which is actually recommending the listing of methyl bromide in the Annex 3 of the Rotterdam Convention. And corresponding DGD for inclusion of methyl bromide in Annex 3 is contained in the document COP 1214 Add 1, which was adopted at CRC 19, and the Conference of the Parties will have a chance to approve this DGD at the upcoming COP 12. I will continue now with the chlorpyrifos. That's the next chemical recommended for listing in the category of pesticides. Listing in Annex 3 was recommended by CRC 19 based on the notifications of final regulatory action from Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and the European Union. Malaysia submitted the notification as a severe restriction with the reason relevant for the human health. Sri Lanka submitted the notification as a ban with reasons relevant for both human health and environment. And the European Union submitted the notification as a ban with reasons relevant to human health. The decision is contained in document RCCOP 12.8, and the corresponding DGD is contained in the document COP 12 at 1. For the parties at the upcoming COP 12, it's relevant to be aware that chlorpyrifos will also be proposed for listing in Annex A of the Stockholm Convention, with certain specific exemptions proposed for production and use, namely in the plant protection for certain agricultural use, then in the control of ticks in cattle, and as a wood preservation product against borers and termites in building foundations. The next in the list of chemicals or pesticides recommended for listing for the first time at COP 12 is paraquat. All documents of relevance are available in the screen, and they're also available in the webpage of the dedicated webpage of the convention website under COP 12. Paraquat, often served as Gramaxone, is one of the most commonly used broad-spectrum herbicides worldwide that is used on fruits, vegetables, oil palm, sugarcane, cotton, coffee, tea, and other products. Recommendation for listing originates from CRC 18 based on the notification submitted by two notifying parties, namely Malaysia and Mozambique, which both submitted notification of final regulatory actions as bans based on human health reasons with regards to the Malaysian notification, where prior the regulatory act to fully ban the use of paraquat as herbicide, it was restricted only to use on oil palm trees below 2 years old, rubber trees, pineapple stems, and hill paddy crops. Whereas the Mozambican notifications, which was submitted as due to human health and environmental reasons and concerns, prior to the regulatory act, the paraquat was registered for use as herbicide on various crops, including sugarcane, various vegetables, and bananas. This detailed information is available in the DGD itself, which is available in the document COP12-15 Add 1, and of course in the corresponding document in 15, which contains the recommendation and the rationale of the Chemical Review Committee to include paraquat in Annex 3 of the Convention. COP is considering the listing of liquid paraquat formulations containing paraquat dichloride already since its sixth meeting, and the decision COP12-15 Ref1 contains a note that basically indicates that listing of paraquat as a pesticide formulation would fall within the scope of the recommendation to list paraquat as a pesticide. I would continue now with the chemicals already considered by previous meetings of the COP. There are in total 6 carryover or deferred chemicals for which previous COP meetings were not able to reach consensus and to list them into Annex 3 of the Convention. 3 of those are pesticides, namely iprodione, acetochlor, and carbosulfan. 2 are severely hazardous pesticide formulations, namely phenthine and paraquat formulations, and 1 is industrial chemical, and that is chrysotyl asbestos. And the first one is iprodione. The recommendation for listing into Annex 3 and the decision which contains this recommendation is available in document COP12-11. Iprodione is considered for listing since the last COP11, where parties were not able to reach consensus, and therefore the consideration of this molecule was automatically deferred to the upcoming COP12 meeting. For the first time, there was no decision that the requirements for listing into Annex 3 were met, and also that the criteria of Annex 2 were met, as is the case for the remaining chemicals recommended for listing by the previous meetings of COPs. The actual recommendation for listing into Annex 3 for iprodione originates from CRC 17, based on the notification submitted by Mozambique and EU. The DGD was adopted at the following CRC 18 meeting that contains the details of the notifications by both notifying parties. Namely, prior the FRAs to ban the use of iprodione took effect, this active substance was used as a fungicide. the EU notifications provides reasons for the regulatory act related to the concerns for human health and the environment, whereas the Mozambican notification provides reasons related to human health. The next chemical is acetochlor. Acetochlor was considered for the first time to be listed into Annex 3 at the 9th meeting, and at this meeting, for the first time, the conference of the parties considered whether acetochlor should be made subject to the PIC procedure. There is a decision RC95 with which the conference of the parties basically decides that the requirements set out in Article 5 of the Convention, including the criteria set out in Annex 2 to the Convention, and the requirements that are set out in paragraph 2 of Article 7 on the process of listing in Annex 3 to the Convention have been met. The COP, additionally, at its 9th meeting, adopted a decision which basically encourages parties to make use of the available information to make informed decisions regarding import and management of acetochlor, and this in line with the exchange provisions of Article 14. And the Secretariat, in line with its decision, is basically using the PIC circular Appendix 6 to publish and share information received from parties on these chemicals that have been recommended for listing into Annex 3, but has yet to take a final decision on listing. COP9 also decided that the agenda for its next ordinary meeting would include further consideration of a draft decision to list acetochlor in the Annex 3 of the Rotterdam Convention. And COP10, COP11 decided to further defer this decision on listing to the corresponding subsequent meetings. To give you a bit of background on these notifications that are contained in the DGB document COP12-6 at 1. Basically, the recommendation for listing that comes from CRC 13 was based on the submissions from EU and SILS group of countries, where prior DFRAs were taken effect to ban acetochlor. This molecule was used as a herbicide on maize to control weeds through broadcast spraying in EU, whereas in SILS parties it was used as a selective herbicide also on maize. And both FRAs submitted by EU and SILS were related to reasons or concerns relevant to human health and the environment. The next one from the pesticide recommended for listing is carbosulfan. For the first time, it was considered at the 8th meeting by the conferences of the parties. As for acetochlor, there is a similar decision for carbosulfan that basically all the requirements of Annex 2 criteria are met, and the requirements of Annex 3 for listing in line with Article 7 are also met. And the same decision RC86 also indicates, as mentioned for acetochlor, that parties can share information on the management of carbosulfan, and they can provide so-called voluntary input responses to the Secretariat, for which PIC Circular Appendix 6 is available. At the 8th meeting, of course, COP was not able to make a decision, and therefore this chemical was deferred to the subsequent 9, 10, and 11 meeting. It will be again considered at COP12. To give you a bit of background on carbosulfan and on the notifications by the notifying parties, The recommendation for listing originates from CRC 11. It's based on the submissions from EU and SILS group of countries, where prior DFRA notifications were taken effect to ban this active ingredient. Carbosulfan was used by incorporation into soil, control soil insects, at locations where maize and sugar beet were grown, in addition to being used on citrus and cotton as indicated in the EU notification. The SILS group of countries notifications provided information that carbosulfan was used as insecticide and nematicide. Both FRA notifications indicated that the regulatory acts were triggered due to reasons or concerns related to human health and the environment. I can continue now with the two set of formulations, severely hazardous pesticide formulations, for which COP has yet to take a decision and recommend for listing into Annex 3. The first one, the liquid formulations on paraquat, they were considered for listing since COP6 in 2013. There is a decision, RC68, in which paragraph 2 of this decision has decided that the requirements set out in Article 6 of the Convention, including the criteria set out in Part 3 of Annex 4, are met, and also that basically the requirements set out in Article 7 in relation to requirements for listing into Annex 3 are also met. From COP6 until COP11, there was no decision for listing, and this formulation was deferred at COP12 for its consideration. The DGD, which is contained in the document 1212 Add 1, provides details of this formulation submitted by Burkina Faso were sufficient for CRC 7 to recommend listing due to human health problems to the applicators under conditions of use in Burkina Faso, in line with the provisions of Annex 4 and Article 6 of the Convention. In the surveyed regions of Burkina Faso, the Gramoxone Super, which is the commercial name of the formulation under which it's sold, was used as a herbicide on cotton, rice, and maize in order to control weeds. The formulation was applied using a pressure backpack sprayer. As already mentioned, the COP12 will consider paraquat also in the category of pesticides, and this recommendation for listing as a formulation falls within the scope of the recommendation for listing and the decision for listing, potential decision of listing as a pesticide. The last one from the formulations and from the group of pesticides for listing into Annex 3 is fenthion. COP initially considered it for the inclusion at its 7th meeting in 2015, but given the lack of consensus, decided to defer further consideration of fenthion to its 8th meeting. At its 8th meeting, COP adopted a decision on fenthion similar as the one for paraquat, that basically the criteria set out in Annex 4, Part 3 are met, and that the requirements for listing and the process for listing in Annex 3 also has been met. COP8 also decided that the agenda for the 9th meeting shall include further consideration to list fenthion formulations into Annex 3, and COP9, 10, and 11 decided to defer the further consideration of this chemical to the upcoming COP12 meeting. In terms of background information for Fentile and for this formulation, that was based on the proposal submitted by CHAT. The recommendation for listing into Annex 3 originates from COC 9. The DGD was adopted at the subsequent COC 10 meeting. And the DGD is of course contained in document 12/10 at 1 for the upcoming POP 12 approval. In terms of the formulation and proposal submitted by CHAT, it's the information provided in the DGD gives information that the pesticide formulations were found to cause human health problems to the applicators under conditions of use in CHAT, which is consistent with the provisions of Article 6 and Annex 4 to the Convention. In CHAT, this formulation was registered and used as an herbicide against granivorous bird, Colea colea, in order to reduce damage to gain substanceless crops in the country. And the last from the list of chemicals recommended for listing, and in this case, this is industrial chemical, it's Chrysotyl asbestos. It was considered for listing since COP3 in 2006, whereas the recommendation for listing originates from the very first COC meeting that took place in 2005. And the DGT was adopted at the subsequent second COC meeting back in 2006, ready for your approval in the DGT available under RC COP 12/9. The listing recommendation by COC1 is on the ground or on the basis of the final regulatory actions to ban or severely restrict the use of Chrysotyl asbestos as submitted by notifying parties, Australia, Chile, and the European Community, due to human health reasons and concerns. In paragraph 2 of decision RC33, the COP decided that the requirements set out in Article 5 of the Convention, including the criteria set out in Annex 2, are met, and also that the process for listing in Annex 3 to the Convention had been met. At its 4/11 meeting, the COP discussed further the listing of Chrysotyl asbestos in Annex 3 to the Convention, but it was unable to reach agreement. The conferences of the parties may also wish to consider the draft decision prepared at its 5th meeting on follow-up action by the Chemical Review Committee on the listing of Chrysotyl asbestos, and that's document UNEP FAO RC COP/26, contained in the Annex 4 of the report of COP 5. With this, I would close my part of the presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Alexander. And turning to the next agenda item on the provisional agenda for the COP, which is compliance. And for this, you have one document only to take a look at, which is document 17 on the report of the related to the procedures and mechanisms on compliance. Just to give you a brief summary of the contents of the document, it reports back on the second meeting of the committee, which was held firstly face-to-face in Rome between the 19th and 21st of March last year. And then there was an online session that took place in September the 30th of September. There is also a third meeting that is planned to be held online this week, actually, on the 6th of March. So the report will not contain the outcomes of that, but it is anticipated that the chair will be able to provide some feedback at the conference of the parties on the outcomes, and that there'll be an oral update from the Secretariat side as well. In terms of the issues that were considered, there was one specific submission considered regarding difficulties with designation of a national authority. And the committee also looked at a number of systemic issues of general compliance as set out in its program of work for the current biennium. Those issues included laws, regulations, policies, procedures, and other measures to implement the convention, notifications of final regulatory actions, imports and exports, information exchange, enhanced cooperation with the Basel Convention Implementation and Compliance Committee. So within the document 17, the committee is reporting back to the Conference of the Parties on its work on those issues. What the committee has also done is to agree on a draft program of work for the next biennium for 2026 to 2027, which has been circulated ahead of the COP12 meeting, and to highlight that comments are invited until the 14th of March. So we have already received comments from some parties, which will be posted on the committee website page. And for those who are still looking at providing comments, there is still an opportunity to do so. In terms of the proposed actions, there are a number of proposed actions following the activities set out in the program of work. In terms of the specific submissions, which the committee was mandated to accord priority to the specific submissions, it has developed 2 templates that could be used for specific submissions by parties, and it is recommending to the COP that it encourage parties to use those templates and that they be made available on the convention website page. In terms of the laws, regulations, policies, procedures, and measures, there is an invitation or within the proposed actions for COP. COP could invite parties to continue to provide information to the committee, including any updates on measures that they have taken to implement the convention. There is also a recommendation to request the Secretariat to assess parties' needs when it comes to assistance on legislative and administrative measures. For notifications of final regulatory action, the committee has said the COP could request the Secretariat to collect more information on challenges that are being faced with submitting those notifications within 90 days of them taking effect, so as set out in the convention. There are also a number of similar actions on different topics. So when it comes to the challenges that were identified and how to potentially address those, the committee in identifying those challenges has recommended that there could be actions in terms of the technical assistance plan for 2026 to 2029 on legislative and administrative measures, on bridging information, on import responses and export notifications. Should the COP proceed with that recommendation, language would then be reflected accordingly. There is also a recommendation to encourage partners, which would include UNEP, meaning amongst others the secretariats of the special program, the Minamata Convention, SAICM, and the new global framework on chemicals, to encourage partners such as FAO and other relevant entities to support the technical assistance plan in organizing activities related to these issues. So looking at what could be done at the secretariat level, but also beyond secretariat level. The COP may wish to approve the program of work for the next biennium, and there are 7 members of the committee whose terms of office are coming to a close at COP12, so there would need to be new members elected, and they would have a term until the close of COP14. Thank you very much, and I pass on to my colleagues.
Thanks, Ivan. And then let's look into the last agenda item called Status of Implementation. So here you have one meeting document with information and proposed action. And then there are 2 information documents, one providing statistical information on implementation of the Rotterdam Convention, and the other one containing responses to a regular survey that is carried out under the Rotterdam Convention. So under this agenda item, parties are looking into a range of different matters, going from definition of the term pesticide, what kind of definitions are available in the or are used by parties. Then there's always an invitation for parties to provide scientific and technical information related to risk evaluation and decision making on hazardous chemicals and pesticides, which is gathered and shared to support other parties. There's also traditionally data on international trade in chemicals listed or recommended for listing, gathered under this item and then posted on the website. It's been noted that, well, this agenda item used to exist before there was a compliance committee under the Rotterdam Convention, so to provide a little bit of information on the implementation under the convention, but now a compliance committee is available and is operating under the convention. So there are various links now between this agenda item and the work of the compliance committee, in particular on the systemic issues of general compliance that Yvonne mentioned. So there's a bit of a proposal from Secretariat side to look into this potential area of overlap and how to go forward. And then the information documents, as I said, there's information document 7. So that one is not yet available, and it will have 2 addenda, but it's going to come available in the next few days. That lays out the results of the survey on the implementation of Articles 11 to 14 of the Convention for the years 2021 and 2022. And then there's the information document 6 with a more detailed information on the progress in the implementation of the Convention. And for information on technical assistance activities, in particular on the submission of import responses and notifications and severely hazardous pesticide formulation proposals, there's reference made to the relevant technical assistance documents. The proposed action that you can find in this document is a little bit different from last time. So in the past, the Conference of the Parties often adopted a decision containing more or less, a decision text along the same lines as in the past. So the proposal for this time would be to not adopt the same decision again, but rather to encourage parties to continue implementation of the previous decisions, and also to request the Secretariat to continue to implement these previous decisions and to report to the next COP. And then there's here also a proposal for the Secretariat to look into streamlining the information collection requests, meaning the ones that are carried out under this periodic questionnaire on implementation of Articles 11 to 14, and the work that is carried out by the Compliance Committee to make sure that parties are not asked on 2 tracks to provide similar or the same kind of information. All right, so that was an overview of other substantive agenda items under the Rotterdam Convention. We are now available for you if you have any questions or if you wish to make any comments or have a discussion on any of the items that we introduced to you. Same as before, you can send your questions either in the chat or you raise your hand, then we would give you the possibility to speak. I think so far I saw that there were 2 questions and comments already in the chat. One was about receiving the recording of the webinar, and yes, so after the webinar we'll send out the PowerPoint presentation, and then in a few days' time you can also access the recording on the website where is the announcement of the webinar. There's then also the recording available. And then I noticed a question from Sarah Esto that I'm sorry, I wasn't sure which item it pertained to, maybe because I missed when exactly it was asked. It says, where can we share our review on the documents? Do you mind explaining a little bit more what you meant with this comment, please? Thank you. And please, for everybody, the floor is now open for any questions or comments, please.
Andrea, I'm not sure that Sarah from ESDO can speak up.
Okay, maybe she can type again into the chat. So I see one question, is the provisional agenda on the website going to be updated? No, there's no plan from our side to update the provisional agenda, so it is contained in document 12/1, and that will be the agenda that will be put in front of the Conference of the Parties for consideration, and the Conference of the Party might, of course, do any adjustments when they adopt the agenda, but this is the final one we're planning to put forward. And then we have a question about the agenda item on Chrysotal. We can quickly go back to that. There we go. So yes, indeed, Chrysotal asbestos is on the agenda of the upcoming COP. You can see here the relevant documents, which are already available on the website. So consideration of this item was not completed at the last meeting of the Conference of the Parties, so consideration will continue at this meeting. Please let me know if you have any specific questions related to this agenda item. Thank you. I see there are some new questions or comments now in the chat. So we have a comment from Dr. Fayhan Al-Sukani. Notice that mercury has its own convention, plus it's considered pesticide and a chemical as well. Do you think we need to unify this? So this is definitely something for the parties to consider, but under the different multilateral environmental agreements, there are different requirements for the chemicals covered. So each conference of the parties can take action on the take its decision on the things that are in front of it. So the Conference of the Parties to the Rotterdam Convention can only consider what is brought forward to it, which is the recommendation coming from the Chemical Review Committee. And then we have a question from Emiliano Alonso on what we mean about completed consideration of listing a chemical in Annex 3. So the listing of chemicals in Annex 3 to the Rotterdam Convention is to be done by consensus from all the parties. So the listing can only be agreed to by consensus. And as long as there is no consensus agreed on whether it gets included in the convention or not, the consideration of the agenda item continues. So this is what has happened at several of the past meetings. Okay, I don't see any new or additional comments in the chat, nor any raised hands. So last chance if there is any question you would like to ask. Okay, not seeing anything. Thank you very much again for your attendance today. We'll send out the presentation shortly. And I do see there is one last question. Okay, would you be able to take that question? It relates to mercury. The proposals on mercury include only metallic mercury or all products with it.
Okay, thank you for unmuting me. Yes, the mercury is the proposed amendments to list mercury is mercury as an elemental mercury. So it's not, and as you know, that the Rotterdam Convention prior informed consent procedure applies to chemicals and not about products that are being traded. So it's the mercury as elementary mercury being traded that is proposed or recommended for making it subject to prior informed consent procedure by listing it in Annex 3.
Thank you, Kay. And we've now also put the link for the other webinars that are coming up this week and in the following weeks into the chat, should you wish to follow any other webinars. Okay. And thank you very much for your attendance today, and we hope to meet you again online or at the latest at the COP soon. Thank you and bye-bye.